Hey guys, in this video, we're going to create this battery charge indicator as an SVG file from scratch. We're going to create it in the Inkscape SVG Editor, which you can download for free. And we're going to convert it into a Siemens dynamic SVG file, add some properties, and hook it up to drawn components. And then we will import it into the SVG library of our project, where we can drag it out onto a screen and animate the properties with tags and scripts. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, let's get started. So for this video, I'm going to be using Inkscape, which is an open source free SVG editor. It's pretty good. I just started using this. So go to inkscape.org, go to download current stable version. It'll redirect you to your operating system's installer and just download and install this package. So once you get Inkscape installed, go ahead and launch it. It'll create a new document. If you have never used Inkscape before, under Help, they have some tutorials, and they recommend you take these first 3. They teach you how to create basic shapes and change the color and how to manipulate them and all the shortcuts. So I highly recommend that you go through these if you've never used this type of software before. Okay, we've got Inkscape installed and we've launched it. It creates a new document. I'm going to select my rectangle tool, and I am not an artist, so I'm not going to be doing anything really fancy here. I'm just going to draw out this rectangle. We're going to create a battery charge indicator. It's going to be a lot like what's on your phone, so I'll just put like a little terminal here, and then I'll do my selector tool so that I can just kind of move this around, make it look the way that I want. I can use my arrow keys. And I'll just click off of the battery to deselect it, choose a different color, and I'll create the fill bar. And what we want to do is name all of these objects so it's easy to find them in the file. So I'll just click this one, and this is the terminal, and we're going to give it the label name, just pound terminal. And this is really important. You got to hit the set button or it doesn't save. Learn that one the hard way. And then I'll select the charge bar. So we'll just call that charge bar, and I'm just going to copy that and paste that into the label, hit the set, and then I'll hold my Alt key down and select, and it's going to select the next object down underneath, and we're going to call this battery body, and I will copy that and paste it in here and hit the set. And then if you like, we can select all of these, right click, and group these, and we can give the group a name and just call it battery and hit this set. Next, I'm going to right click and go to document properties, and I will hit the resize to content. So now the entire document is just encapsulating this battery, and our scale should be at 1. Here's our view box size. And we are going to save, and we are just going to call this battery charge. And we are going to save this as an optimized SVG. This kind of cleans it up and just gives us only what we need. And then it'll bring up a dialog and we can kind of review. I like to make sure that Convert CSS Attributes is checked. And for my SVG, I like to turn on the enable view boxing and the pretty formatting. And I don't want to remove unused IDs. We'll click OK. And just open up our SVG, and this is what it looks like. That looks pretty good. So now let's open our new SVG in Notepad++ or whatever text editor that you have. And you can see it's nice and clean. This is your header area, and then we've got our layer, battery, which is our group, and then our body, our terminal, and our charge bar. So because we saved this in an optimized format, we are ready to go ahead and convert this to an SVG HMI. But before we do that, let's take a look at the Siemens documentation on exactly what an SVG HMI document is. Siemens does have documentation on how to create dynamic SVGs for use with simatic WinCC. It is not available on their website. No, this link does not work. I've tried it, but I'll tell you a little later in the video how you can get this documentation. So a couple of things in the documentation I do want to point out. They go through and talk about SVGs and the requirements to use SVGs in WinCC, specifically what the structure has to be. And we talked about this earlier. The document type header has to be Siemens, the namespace has to, at the very least, specify the HMI and the hmi-bind namespaces. And you can define the size using width and height or with a view box, which keeps your aspect ratio. I want to go to the functions not supported by WinCC. One is CSS type styling, which Inkscape does by default, so we need to know that it doesn't support this so we can go back and kind of make these corrections. Also, any type of scripting and animation internal to the SVG is not supported in Siemens. Basically, what you do is you use your param definitions to tie your WinCC properties into drawn objects in your SVG, and then you can use tags and scripts in WinCC to do those types of animations. And the documentation gives you some examples, how to change your colors, how to do a gradient color, rotation, scaling, hide and show, and things like that. So we'll be coming back to this and looking at these. So now we know a little bit more about what an SVG HMI document is, and I will be sharing how to get that document at the end of this video, so stay tuned. I am going to open the divided bar display that I used as an example in the first video in this series, so if you didn't catch that, I'm going to throw a link up to this. But if you want to know how to do it, just make sure that you've pulled out the divided bar display onto at least one page, so it will be there. And you're going to find this in the dashboard widgets, and you can just grab it and pull it out. And then once you've done that, go over to your project folder in the GRAX directory, SVG library, version 2.0, go into the dashboard widgets, same folder, and then you can open this directly in Notepad. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this first section. So doc type, this is the document type for Siemens. We need that. The SVG namespace definition that has the HMI and the HMI-bind. And also our HMI self. We're probably going to use most of these properties. And then the local definitions we will copy as well. So I'll just right click and copy this, and we'll go over to our SVG. And I'm just going to make some space at the top because some of this information I want to preserve. So I'm going to paste this in there. And then we need the view box, and make sure you get that last quotation. And we will update the view box here from what we copied over. Then you're going to need to get rid of these three lines, which is your XML version and then your old SVG definition. So we'll just get rid of that. Right after your defs, we've got a couple of groups, and then we've got our elements, and then we're closing our groups, and then we close out the SVG. Now, a couple other things that we need to do. We have to change this display name. It's got to be unique. So we're going to change this to Battery Charge. I will copy this, and we also have to update the extended name. And finally, we are going to save as SVG HMI as the file extension. Nothing else will work with Siemens. So then we'll just hit save. Next, we need to import it. So go to Graphics Designer in your project. And if you haven't already, go ahead and create a new library here. It'll just make a folder, and then highlight that folder. Right click, we'll do Import SVG Graphic. And I will select my Battery Charge SVG HMI, hit Import, and we'll see a preview, and that's like a really good sign. And I'll just open a new page and drag it out. And there is our new Battery Charge SVG object. And if you select the object and go down to the symbol properties, you will see all the properties that we defined in our widget section show up in the WinCC properties, and you can add scripts and tags to these. So the next step is going to be making some of these properties dynamic for fill level and color, and we'll add a text object to show % of charge. So let's go back to our Battery Charge SVG HMI file, and let's get our properties sorted. I only need one color attribute, so I'm just going to save this color background, and we're going to change the name to charge bar color. By default, I want to set this to green. With a hex representation, this is using RGBA. So your alpha is your first argument here, and then you've got these two are red, these two are green, and these two are blue. So if I want all green, it's 00 FF 00. And so if we want to tie this property down to our charge bar, then we have to tie it to this fill property, which defines the color. And so I always like to just refer back to one of the files that I know that it works. If you saw the last video that we did, we talked about the hmi-bind directive, and basically it allows you to bind one of the parameters to a value. And so in this case, it's setting the fill, and it's using a Converter.RGBA, that's red, green, blue, alpha, and that is with our parameter properties color background. And that's exactly what we want to do. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing and make sure you get that last double quote. I'm going to go back into our file, and I am just going to copy over this whole thing, and I'll just grab the name of our variable and put it in here. And so the way you read this is going to be set to a color in the WinCC properties interface of the object or by a script or a tag, and then it is going to be bound to that parameter, to this fill value. It's going to take whatever color and it's going to run it through this RGBA converter and paint the object. So let's check it out. I'm going to save this. And we're going to go back into Graphics Designer. I'm going to get rid of this object and we're just going to re-import it. So I'll just right-click, delete, and then do Import SVG Graphics. And here's our battery charge. I'll import that, pull this out, and then we'll go look at our properties interface. There's our charge bar color, and we could try to change that, and it does work. Next, let's tackle the fill level. So going back to our document, one easy way that we could do a fill level is to take our charge bar and just grow it, which is going to be the width. And we can use our normalized value that's already here that we copied over from the divided bar. And looking at this, it's calculated, and it's just taking the value property and binding it between 0 and 1, where 0 is 0 and 1 is 100 because of the max range. Well, the charge bar goes out to a width of 46. So it goes from 2.4 to 46. So if 100 were put into value, this would need to equate to 46. So all we really have to do is grab this value, and we are just going to type in hmi-bind. We're going to bind the width, and these are our local definitions. Going back to look at our divided bar, if you look at how we're using this, you do local props. It's the local props collection, normalized value. So we'll just go back to our battery charge, and we're going to bind this to local props dot, and then I'll just copy this times 46, which is 100%. So if you put anything in higher than that, it's never going to go over that because this is limited here. So we'll save that, and we'll go out and get rid of these, and I will re-import. I'll grab our battery charge, pull it out. By default, it's 45. If we set it to 50, it looks about halfway. If we set it up to 100, it goes all the way to 100. Let's see what happens if we go over 100. It is limiting, so it doesn't matter. And we can just set it to some arbitrary values and see how it looks, but that looks pretty good. So next, I want to put a percent indicator, put it right in the middle of the fill level so it'll go 0 to 100%. So going back to the Siemens documentation, let's take a look at how the SVG HMI handles text. I'll go to the engineering section, dynamic text. And this area here is how they handle text. It's pretty easy. I tried adding this in Inkscape, and it had so many tags that were not supported that it's easier for me to just copy this here and just kind of figure out the X and Y and the size. We'll go into Notepad, and then I want to put this down below my charge bar. And what I have found is when you place a new element in, it seems to draw these in order for each layer. So if I put it after the charge bar, it should display on top of the charge bar. And I did a little bit of experimentation to see what values worked the best in here. So X equals 26, that's about half of my charge bar, give or take. And then the Y, we'll put that at 16. And this STX is just some kind of artifact from the PDF. And I found that a font size of 8 was pretty good. I'm not going to use this letter spacing. And then for our fill, we want to do kind of a gray. So I'm just going to go with CD, CD, CD for now. And now in this example where we pulled this from, it's looking for a param props.text. So we have to have a way to take this value here, which is a number, and convert it into text and put it into this value. So one piece of advice I'm going to give you is if you need to know how to do something, probably the quickest way for you to figure out is go look at one of the SVG objects that is doing the thing that you need it to do and go look at how they're doing it. Well, if you look at the WinCC simple gauge, it is displaying a value 78 as a number, which is your needle position, and as a text, which is right here. So we are going to go open that up. We'll go into our project directory, into Grax, SVG library, version 2.0. And under dashboard widgets, there's this simple gauge, and we will just edit this in Notepad. So they have a value, and then they also have a text unit, which is %. And the way that they do this is we'll look for this value, just scroll down, and it's actually over here. So this is where the text is, and they are using this function Converter.FormatPattern, and then they're sending it a numerical value, and this is some kind of placeholder. So going back to the documentation, if we go to the converter commands, I do see this format pattern, but unfortunately they don't tell you what format that pattern takes, how you indicate a variable, how you indicate a value. So going back to our document, we're going to go to the simple gauge, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create this text unit parameter so that we can have the same property. And then I'm going to just copy this text line, and this is where our value is going to go. And I'll pop another text down here, which is going to be for the text unit. So I'm just going to copy this and put that in there. So that'll give us our %sign. And then for our format pattern, I'm just going to copy this whole thing, and I'm assuming this I is just a format and I is probably integer, and I'm going to place that right here. So the way that this should work is it should take our value and it should convert it into text and put it in this first text block. Then the second text block, I'm just going to kind of eyeball this and put this out about 38 in the X direction and leave Y at 16, and this should pull this text unit from here, which defaults to a %. Then we're just going to save this and re-import it. So we'll go back to Graphics Designer, and I will delete that library and re-import the new one. And I'll just pop a new page out, and we do have the 100%, and we'll go and just try to change this, make sure it looks good. So I just need a little bit darker gray there. And so let's just pick a gray out here, probably something about that dark, which is 6D, 6D, 6D. Go back here, and we could do this. And we could also put a property in for the font color if we wanted to do that, but let's just look at this. I'll save it, get rid of this guy, delete it out, and re-import it back in. Yeah, that's a lot better. So let's see how it looks when it's in the black. Yeah, we can still see it. And we can even see if our text unit works. Yep, it does work. So we're good there. We'll leave that at %. So I am going to save this page as my battery SVG, and if we want to check this out in runtime on the value, I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to hook it up to this battery test tag. It's an unsigned 8-bit, and then I am going to grab a slider object and hook it up to the same tag, and we will save and go to runtime, and we're at 0%. And looks like it works pretty good. So there's a lot more we could do to this object. We could put in a font color. We could put in a background for the charge bar. we could put in error colors and things like that, but I think I will save that for some future videos. I'm going to be doing a couple more in this series on SVGs. One will cover doing some of the other animations like rotation and things like that, and another one will just be kind of a tips and tricks video showing all the kind of pitfalls and the things I've learned along with this journey. I hope that you've learned a lot about SVGs, and if this is helpful, I would really appreciate you subscribing to my channel, liking this video. It helps me bring more of this content to you. And that's it for now. Thank you for watching.